Hey, what's up? Welcome back to the Long Lens Podcast. This is the podcast where I answer questions from my filmmaking and YouTube community, and we just talk about all things filmmaking, YouTube, cameras, that type of stuff. So if this is your first time here, basically I do a Q&A at the beginning of every month where I ask questions from you about really anything that has to do with filmmaking, and then I just try to answer them to the best of my abilities. So it's going to be a pretty quick episode. I am going to NAB tomorrow, so pretty excited for that, and I'll probably have another episode in the middle of this month. I haven't done a news with Nigel segment on this podcast for a while, so I'll probably do one of those after NAB just so I can kind of talk about some of the new stuff that's come out. This is my first time going to NAB since I started filmmaking. I've known of NAB, but haven't really had the urge to go. Just decided that this year is probably a good year to go. So I'm pretty excited. Anyways, any other housekeeping things? If you'd like to support this podcast, you can support me on Patreon. There you'll get to ask me questions and I'll answer them here on the podcast first, as well as give you a little shout out. And there's a bunch of extra bonus content, and you'll get my $5 LUTs for free and stuff like that. So consider joining me there. I have some questions on Patreon, and then we'll go to the YouTube community page and I'll answer the questions there. So this first question is from a longtime supporter, Ivan Martinek. Ivan asks, I shoot water a lot, so I need a polarizing filter and at the same time an ND filter to keep my shutter at 180 degrees. However, when I stack two different filters on top of each other, I get quite a lot of tint in my footage. Is there a better way? Yeah, so the first thing that would come to my mind would probably be getting a matte box and then just doing single NDs, even like just a really cheap one, like the Hilta or Small Rig matte box. And I would put my polarizing filter on and get that to where I'm, seeing through the water, cutting out the reflections. And then I would probably invest in some single NDs that you could slide into the matte box, and that might help with the tint. I know that you get a lot more tint with variable NDs, so you could try that. I didn't say you're using variable NDs, but I definitely think that variable NDs shift the color a lot more than single NDs do. So you could try that. Use your polarizer that you like, and then just try using ND filters in a matte box. That's what I would do. Other than that, I can't really think of a perfect solution to get rid of any tint. I think that even the best ND filters are going to give you a tint in your footage. So that would be the solution that I would go with. All right, so next question is from Ramal Persad. And Ramal asked, hey man, so I want to grab a flash for my S5. Any recommendations? Nothing too crazy. Since I mainly shoot video with just a few pictures here and there, nothing professional level. Just snapping a few pics between friends and family, anything small and affordable. Yeah, I know that Godox makes flashes for Panasonic cameras, so that's the first thing that would come to mind. Yeah, if I can't remember the model name because I'm not super into flashes, but I'll leave one in the description or the podcast show notes that you could check out that I would probably get. But yeah, I used Godox flashes in the past and I really like them. So that's what I would go with personally. And Ramal asks another question. Hey man, just another quick question. Would you by any chance consider doing like a how-to video on how to properly expose your video using your camera, ideally Panasonic tools like the histogram, zebra, and false color? I know there are a ton of pre-existing videos on the internet, but I would generally want to see your workflow and your approach and methodology towards your video filming. Cheers and thanks. I might be able to do a video like that maybe on Patreon, but I can tell you right now, just like a really quick and easy tutorial on my GH5, for instance, I feel like it's not the same as other cameras where you need to expose for the shadows or, expose to the right or whatever. On my GH5 with my monitoring LUT that I have, I pretty much just make sure that it looks good in camera. And if it's going to look good and nothing's going to look clipped on my LCD screen with my monitoring LUT on it, I know that it's probably going to look good when I get it into the editing system. So typically on my GH5 at least, I stick with the native ISO 400 when I can. I'll usually only try to go up to 800. So I'll use either 400 or 800. I don't like the in-between ISOs. They don't seem to give me as clean as shadows. But anyways, it's going to be different on different cameras. On my S5IIX, I'll keep it at 640 or 4000. I'll try not to use the in-between ISOs what I can, but on Panasonic cameras, you can pretty much expose it in camera with your monitoring LUT, and you won't really have to worry too much about getting super noisy shadows or clipped highlights when you take it into the editing system. I can't say that's the same with Sony or Canon cameras, but I actually don't use my histogram. The only exposure tool that I use is my zebras. Now, one thing that you can do is you can set your zebra level to whatever you want. So if you want your skin to be at 70 IRE or 60 IRE or whatever, you can set one of your zebra settings to be 60 or 70 IRE. And then you can start exposing your camera until you start seeing zebras on your skin. And then you know that your skin is at that IRE value. So that's something that I do use. And then I have my zebras on, I think, 90 IRE. And that's when I know, like, if I go way too high and start seeing, zebras, then I know that like whatever the zebras are on are clipped. Like, for instance, right now I can see that my light back there is clipping, and I can see that my light over there is clipping, but I don't care because there's no information back there that you really need to see. So yeah, that's how I expose my GH5, and I hope that helps. So those are all the questions that we got on Patreon, and I'm going to go to the YouTube community tab, or I guess it's called the posts tab now, which this is just a sidebar, but like, I feel like community posts or just posts aren't really seen as often as they used to be. At least mine aren't. Maybe I'm just not posting enough, or people aren't using like the mobile app on YouTube as much, but I feel like I don't see other people's community posts very often either, unless I'm like, part of their channel membership. So I don't know. All right. The first question is, hey, Nigel. So a few months back, you suggested to me to get the S5 II over buying a new Micro Four Thirds camera and sell off my G85 kit. I think I remember that episode. And I listened. I got myself an S5IIX, and OMG, the quality difference is night and day. I am so much happier with the results that this camera produces. I hadn't sold my G85 and I'm just using it as a B cam. Truly appreciate your content. Thank you. Sweet. Yeah, I could definitely see the huge quality shift that you would see from a G85 to an S5IIX. It's not to say the G85 is bad, but there is definitely a quality difference between those two cameras. I'm glad you like it. All right, and that same person continues, as I upgrade from my G85 to the S5IIX, this camera has so many settings and functions. The G85 had really basic and simple settings, but the S5IIX really has tons of settings which are confusing for now. So I can suggest you a video topic, setting up a newer Lumix camera, like custom keys, color profile, video photo settings, and how you use the best settings in newer Lumix cameras. Yeah, that's another one that I feel like probably wouldn't live on my main channel. Maybe I'll do one of those here on my second channel. Yeah, I'll definitely consider that. I know there's a lot of people, including myself, when you get a new camera, you like to watch how other people set it up just so that you can kind of get a good starting point. So I'll definitely consider that. All right, so next question is, what investment have you made that has made the biggest impact on you as a creator or filmmaker? Like, one that comes, to my head instantly is my M1 Max MacBook Pro. I was kind of stubborn and didn't want to I didn't think that they were actually that much better than everyone said that they were. But man, going from my 2019 MacBook Pro to this M1 Max MacBook Pro, it is insane. And it's one of those things where it's like editing no longer slows me down, where it's like on my older MacBook, pre-render times, the render times, playing it back, creating proxies, all that type of stuff, just slowed down the creation process. But this is even like an older M1, there's already the M4s out. I've said this before, I can't imagine a world where I would need something faster than my M1 Max right now, because it's just cuts through everything that I have like butter. So I don't really have a need to upgrade it. And, I can probably see myself using this for the next 2 to 3 years until, maybe it gets a little bit old in the tooth. But yeah, my M1 Max MacBook Pro was definitely an investment that I think changed my career and helped me create a lot more. I'm trying to think of what else. I just did a video on my LG Ultrafine monitor. That was a really good investment. I got that for a crazy good deal. I was looking online, and there are some places that are still selling it at what looks like full price, which is $1,500. I got this LG Ultrafine 5K on Facebook Marketplace for $200. So that was a really good investment. I really do like the Godox lights that I've bought. Some of the Godox lights have been given to me, but I purchased the one that's lighting me right now, the ML30. I purchased that one with my own money. This Photex soft lighter has also been a really great investment. Those are really the only things that can really come to mind right now that I've spent money on that I'm really happy that I did. All right, so next question is, when you edit your footage, most specifically from the BGH1, do you apply sharpness in post or no? I find myself not using post sharpening on most cameras I use because I don't like my footage to look too digital. Yeah, I don't add any post sharpening to any of my modern cameras like the GH5, S5IIX, or the BGH1. This camera does have an OLPF, which can, in theory, make it not as sharp as something like my GH5. But honestly, it's a very negligible difference. So no, I never add sharpening in post to my modern 4K cameras. To cameras like the GH3 or to maybe some of like my softer cameras, I'll add just a little bit of post sharpening, and I use the unsharp mask when I do that. I don't do it on like the little like sharpness slider. But yeah, I never do post sharpening. If anything, I want to take a little bit of sharpening away sometimes because it looks too sharp. But I only do unsharp mask on footage that's inherently soft, like in comparison to my 4K cameras, like my GH3. But yeah, it is kind of crazy that like the sharpening filter, I feel like, is almost a thing in the past because we wanted our 1080p footage to look as sharp as we possibly could. So we'd add just a little bit of sharpening to help it. But now people are, throwing vintage lenses and diffusion filters in front of our lenses so that they're less sharp, which I just think is kind of funny. All right, this next question is very long, so I'm gonna try to get through it quick. Hi Nigel, I've been a loyal follower of your channel for quite some time, ever since your videos featuring the EM1 Mark II. I run a music gear channel and initially used the EM1 Mark II with a 17mm f1.2 and the 12-40 f2.8. Later, I switched to the OM5 for its portability, but I found it quite difficult to handle when paired with the f1.2 lenses. Recently, I've been producing more YouTube videos and IG Reels. I'd like to shoot an open gate format. I've now sold all my MFT gear, and I'm deciding between the S5IIX and the S9. Which one would you recommend? Additionally, in terms of lenses, would you suggest starting out with a 20-60, 18-40, or a combination of the Sigma 16-28 and 28-70? If I end up choosing the S5IIX or the S9, which camera would you recommend as a B camera or for secondary footage? I really appreciate your thoughts. Okay, so if you're used to the EM1 Mark II and all the video features and the reliability of that camera, I would initially say if you're shooting videos primarily, get the S5IIX. The S9 is good, but you'll never have to worry about overheating with the S5IIX. You'll have all of your video stuff basically covered for the next, you could shoot forever on that camera as far as I'm concerned, and you won't be lacking in quality. It's funny because I feel like those two cameras are what a lot of people should probably go with. Like the S5IIX as like your main video camera, and then the S9 as like your sidearm, you know what I mean? And that's one thing that like, I feel like Lumix has always needed a sidearm camera, whereas like the Sonys, you have like the ZV-1s and the ZV-E10s and stuff like that, like those smaller, cheaper cameras that you can use kind of as like your sidearm camera. But for the longest time, Lumix had never really had that. But I think that the S9 is kind of there now. Now you don't have any recording limits. You can let the camera overheat. I'll just tell you what I would do. If I were you, I would get the S5IIX and I would get one of those Sigma lenses if you don't want to spend a lot of money. I think that the 28-70 is a great place to start. And then as a B camera, I still think the S9 is the best B camera to the S5IIX. And so I would get the S9 and then pair it with like some small Sigma primes. So if you wanted just like a smaller kit that you could take out with you, that would, it would mix in perfectly with your S5IIX footage because it's the same sensor and essentially the same video quality. The only thing that you're not going to get on the S9 is a fan, the all-eye codecs, and the ability to do stuff out via like HDMI, and you're not going to get ProRes, 1080p or any of the things that are specific to the S5IIX. But that's the route that I would go. The Sigma 28-70 for like your main S5IIX, and then the S9, and you could start out with like the 45mm f2.8 as like just a small prime to throw on the S9. That's the route that I would take. I hope that helps. I think that like you really can't go wrong with either of those cameras, but if you're asking me personally, that's probably what I would do. And yeah, those are all the questions that I had on Patreon and YouTube. So yeah, be sure to come back in a couple of weeks, and I'll probably be doing another podcast episode talking about NAB and all the new stuff that came out. So that should be pretty fun. Anyways, talk to you guys later. Thanks for listening and watching, and yeah, see you soon.